Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Wolfblade, Maze of the Dragon by Marco Frazetta, narrated by John Mclain. The Wolf Returns. Prologue. The wings of the great wyvern midnight sliced darkening clouds. There below was our prey, a man traveling a trade road on his carriage. It was no simple carriage. It was a wheel market, a long house of iron-studded wood, pulled by 10 brawny workhorses. The merchant driving it, reins draped from his hands, was oblivious to the enormous wings that soared above him. "Down, Midnight!" My black wyvern swept down like a falling dagger, his shadow engulfing the traveling wheel market.
"God save me!"
the man screamed as Midnight perched on his carriage like a rude raven, rocking the whole thing to a stop, so that for a moment I feared it would topple over. The sound of pots, pans, trinkets of every sort jangling filled the air all around it. The horses which drove it on whinnied, kicking as if a great serpent was upon them, which I supposed was not far from the truth. The man scurried into the massive carriage like a mouse into a kitchen hole. "Skald," I muttered, breathing in the clean northern air. My feet crunched onto the rocky soil. With a long lunge, I pressed into the wheel market's dark interior, which was filled to the brim with trade goods. Its driver was curled up, recoiling as far back into the corner of the carriage as the walls would allow, like a child about to be beaten by a drunk parent.
"Please, take anything! Take it!"
Curly hair fell over his face, and oily, pockmarked skin clashed with the seafoam green of his silk finery. My huge fist snatched something hanging on a hook, a rolled-up black tarp. It was the right size. My eyes fixed on the man. "Forgive me for frightening you." His eyes jittered from the steel haft of my axe, rising from my back, to my 2 clawed gauntlets, one black as obsidian and enwrapped in chains, the other like white marble, a ghostly sheen upon it, like water running over smooth stones.
"Please, just spare me!"
He was an imperial merchant, traveling upon the newly built imperial roads in Goldwater, the capital jarldom that was slowly becoming imperial territory in all but name. Still, I would not punish him for the treachery of his king, or his emperor. "You think me a thief. In that, you are wrong." I flicked him a gold piece, 10 times the price of the tarp. It clattered at his feet. He did not pick it up, still sweating with fear. The black tarp unfurled in my spreading arms. The ripping sound of me tearing a hole in it made the man jump. I draped it over myself, forming a makeshift hooded cloak large enough to engulf my massive frame. I plucked a stud from the wall. The large iron nail squealed as I bent it in my fingers, clasping the folds of my cloak together. "But you are right about one thing, merchant." I paused for a moment before I leapt out the door. "In this land, I am a criminal." Chapter 1. The towers of Stone Mantle raked the burning sky. "The sunsets here in Skald must remind you of the red skies of Malphion, Vixerai." My voice boomed as winds made my hair dance and my words toss about in the air. My succubus darted closer, her wings beating with easy grace.
"They do, Rothan. These are the reddest I have seen in your world."
Midnight tilted his massive wings so that we cut through a thin cloud. "One Eye?" I spoke, my voice growing more grim, for I knew my old friend was still not himself, and knew not what the sight of Wolfrine would mean to him. "We are home." A quick glance back at him riding on Midnight behind me. He seemed overwhelmed with a confused gladness. I reassured him. "Do not worry, friend. You will return to yourself, in time. We circled, and I took in the rolling green hills, the city which sprawled all throughout them. Come, Vixerai, we approach my home, and you must be a woman once more. Her sleek rose body came swooping onto my wyvern. She perched on the base of his scaly neck as easily as a bird on a tree branch, her wings gusting just enough to steady herself, no matter how midnight stirred.
"Do I have to?"
she said, but took the ring from her pouch, for she already knew the answer. Aye.
"Well, to play dress-up again."
She slipped the ring on, and a string of magic crackled through her, transformed her claws to the slippered feet of a young damsel, and continued up through her body until she was a young maiden with a magenta summer dress fit for a long night of revelry. She turned and sat, with her slender back pressed up against me, her red wine hair grazing my chin. Flight. A young woman wrapped in my arm, the towers of Stone Mantle growing larger. Strange, I muttered almost to myself. Wulfrine's banners do not fly. One-Eye, do you recall the last time that the proud banners of Wulfrine did not flutter atop Stone Mantle's towers? No, I wish I did, One-Eye responded. My mind grasped at possibilities. Jarl Bardewulf had been at death's door for some time. Perhaps bringing the banners down was some kind of mourning. Perhaps King Albrecht had imposed some kind of new law to replace the banners as a display of loyalty. Or perhaps the Imperials were involved. I would have to find out, and be careful as I did so, for by King Albrecht's own edict I had been handed over to the Imperials to be mind-flayed. It was to be a death sentence, my body and mind used for whatever purposes the Imperials had for me. General Escaelian had hinted that my Fenrir condition would be useful to the Imperial military, and I did not want to find out firsthand what that use was. We landed in a small clearing, just large enough that Midnight had to recoil his wings as tree branches grazed along his long, scaled body. He curled himself about like a hound finding a spot to nestle himself. My feet felt the soft ground of the woods. Vixerai, One-Eye, stay here with Midnight. Stay hidden. I commanded my woman and companion.
"Will you be gone long?"
Vixerai asked, ever eager for my presence. That only the gods know. The trees gave me cover as I swept through them, my cloak making me truly like a shadow in the falling dusk. It took me only moments to reach the base of Red Hill, where our ancestral manor watched the fields around it. All seemed still. Far off I could hear the clinking of some oxen pulling a cart along, farmers headed home for the day. There was no one watching, so I darted out of the small tree cover. The back entrance to our manor was locked. My cloak grazed the red-painted wood as I stayed under the eaves and their growing shadows. I worked the latch of my wooden window. I had done this countless times growing up. My thick leg looped over, and a moment later I was through. Darkness. Or near so, for just enough light seeped in through the imperfections of the window frames for me to see the lacquered wood, firs, and brass torchlights built into the wall. They were cold, however. As I made my way through the home, it seemed abandoned. "Father?" My whisper hissed. "Your brand?" My footsteps caressed the wood floor, hoping not to startle anyone. My suspicion of an ambush was growing as well. "Eliette?" I called to our maid, but no one answered. Fear rooted into my heart. Both King Albrecht and Jarl Bardewulf had reason to wish my family ill. My mind turned to the wisest man in Wulfrine, and my cloak billowed. "Dorgramu?" I said, as I perched on his windowsill, my claws digging into the window frame above me. I had summoned my half-Fenrir form, for I had to leap 2 stories up Dorgramu's domed, frozen lava home, and my hairier self was more suited to such a thing.
Gods!
The wizard turned, his heart nearly leaping out of him from the look of his face. He was in his circular study, with tomes filling the curved walls, along with all manner of arcane items, scrolls, ancient idols, strange skulls, ceremonial daggers, jars and flasks holding powders, liquids, oozes of every sort.
Rothan?
Aye. My feet landed more softly in the chamber than any would imagine for wearing steel greaves. You must tell me what has happened to my father and brother, to my women and friend, to this whole city, for the banners of Wulfrine do not fly.
You was sent away on the Dominion, to the Black Tier. How did you escape? Did you truly live to see its vampire queen?
His eyes were wild with a wizard's hungry curiosity as he drank in my form with its arcane armor and weapons. He rubbed his neatly trimmed gray beard unconsciously, like a hungry cat wetting its lips, and was almost unaware of his shirtless body. I can explain later, wizard. First, answer me.
Yes. Yes, of course.
He shook his head as if waking from a drug. He turned, plucked his gray robe with its crimson mantle, and slipped them both on, covering his bare, wrinkling chest.
These are dark times, Rothan.
How dark?
Shortly after you were taken, Jarl Bardewulf's brother, Dren Klauser, arrived in Wulfrine with an escort of imperial and royal troops. He demanded that he be recognized as the new Jarl of Wulfrine, for he was his brother's legitimate heir, and Siv's rule was unrecognized by both the crown as well as the emperor.
Was it civil war, then?
Almost. But I convinced your father that this was unwise. He did recognize that he was in danger, and so he gathered what men were loyal to him here in Wulfrine, and took his force to 3 points, where the borders of Jarkendur, Ironrise, and Wulfrine meet. He went there with the objective of holding the advancing orc horde. For we were right all along, of course. The horde marches on, driven by Thousand Fangs, who now appears before the crazed green masses as a fiery mouth that stretches near a mile wide above them. In this way, your father has escaped a confrontation with Dren Klauser, as well as gathered warriors from all 3 jarldoms who are eager to defend Skald from the orcs.
And Belobel, Kyra, Quistane?
They left shortly after your father. They wanted to chase after you the moment you were taken, but with great effort I convinced them not to. For you were taken aboard a mighty griffin, and would have long been sentenced to the fate I imagined before they arrived. Finally, when Dren Klauser arrived, and Wulfrine became dangerous for them, I could hold them here no longer, nor was it wise for me to do so. They now travel through Ironrise, planning to meet with Quistane's brother priests, convinced that they might know of some way to release you from the Black Tier, or from the Dominion.
They go searching for help from the Thrawn priesthood?
Yes. When word reached us that you had been taken aboard the Dominion, I told them you were beyond my help. For if you had been taken aboard a normal Imperial runner, I might have been able to interfere with its course through some water elemental, arranged for some kind of rescue, perhaps. But a steel mountain like the Dominion, I would have to bend Zal, goddess of the sea, herself to my will to stop such a vessel.
Damn it. Can you get a message to them, with one of your spirits, one of your elementals? Tell them I am free and here in Wulfrine?
It would be a difficult task. Not only because the spirit I bind would have to find them as they travel, but also because I am watched.
At my confused look, his voice turned low, and he nudged me by the shoulder to follow him. His robe trailed behind him as he led me to his window. He parted the curtains just enough that I could spy down the stairs leading to his home. There was a glint of armor and spear in the moonlight. Armored guards, 3 at least. "Drenklauser doesn't trust you," I said, as we stepped away from the window.
"No. He keeps watch on me at all times. Even has a wizard of his own who comes here daily to inspect my spell work and ensure I am not conjuring something against Dren's rule."
Drenklauser is earning me as an enemy, and lately my enemies have not been faring well. My shoulders swelled with tension.
"Perhaps I should not tell you this next then, for Fenrirs have a taste for wrath, among other things."
"Tell me, Dorgramu. Lives are at stake." He sighed.
"Of course. You must know. Drenklauser has not only declared himself Jarl with royal approval, but he has also taken Siv's hand in marriage."
For a moment, my wrath turned to utter confusion. "But he's her uncle."
"Yes, but he is a man who is driven only by a relentless, merciless ambition, which he presents as unflinching duty. Perhaps in his mind they are the same somehow. And so he has invoked the ancient custom of levy marriage, whereby a brother takes his widowed wife as his own to ensure her well-being and his deceased brother's continued legacy through his children. Of course, in Dren's warped mind, this means marrying Siv, for that will ensure that the lineage of Bardewulf's house as Jarls will be unbroken and unquestioned."
"That's madness. Jarl Bardewulf is resentful and paranoid, but even he will not let Siv fall into such a fate."
"Jarl Bardewulf is even closer to death's door than you last saw him. He has been unconscious for days now. In truth, I cannot tell whether it is Drenklauser's lust for power, for Siv, or truly a twisted sense of family honor that propels him to such action."
"Siv must be horrified, but I know her. She will never go through with such a thing."
"It is not in Dren's nature to gently plead. He will force her to this, Rothan, by whatever means necessary. He has already begun."
My jaw rattled as a growl rippled through me. "Where is she?"
"He keeps her locked in her chamber, atop the Unicorn Tower at Stone Mantle, where daughters and wives of Jarls have dwelled for centuries."
My cloak rustled as I hurried back to the window. "Get a message to my companions if you can, that I am well, and I will find them. I will deal with Dren first. I care not if word spreads of my escape from the Imperials."
"Rothan, be careful. The same warped thinking that makes Dren a deviant also makes him cunning, also makes him dangerous."
I turned to the wizard, one metal greave already on the window ledge. "I have slayed orc warlords, demons, ancient vampires. What is a mortal man to me?" Fur burst through my pores, my skull contorting, my tissues swelling with the strength of Fenris. It is he who should fear what is coming for him. Chapter 2. With night consuming the city of Wulfrine, Midnight and I swept in an ominous arc, circling the tallest tower of Stone Mantle like it was our prey. Wind blasted my face. In a moment we were upon the tower's coned roof, Midnight's long claws curled around it, his wings beating slowly, uneasily, to maintain his perch. "Go back to One Eye and Vixerai. Fly them to safety should any danger come upon them. I will come find you when I am finished here." The black wyvern's throat rattled as if there were metal marbles inside it. He was beginning to understand me more and more as time passed. His wings billowed, and my fur was gusted as he pressed himself off the tower and back into the sky. For a passing moment I glanced about me, my metal greaves and clawed gauntlets digging into the tiles of the roof. Growing up under the shadow of these great towers, I never thought I would one day have this view of the entire castle stretching out below me. A slight vertigo licked at my gut, but I was becoming used to it, having soared in the red skies of Malphion. My metal claws scratched against the tiles as I crouched and peered over the edge of the tower roof, to a fall that had to be at least 300 feet to the massive wall that rose out below me. A slight drizzle was beginning to fall, which only made the distance of the fall that much more apparent, the white strings of rain beginning to drop and measure such a fall. I hurled myself over the edge, my body tasting the doomed freedom of plummeting once more. My chain claw hissed out from me. Crack! It embedded itself on a stone above me. I restrained how much chain extended out from my gauntlet, easing my fall, then used my ghost hand gauntlet, digging its razor claws into the stone to prop myself up. I was on the side of the tower now, climbing up with long strides of my limbs. I grasped onto a balustrade, its ornamental stonework built in a bygone era, and meant for a noble to step out on a small balcony, just enough space for one besides them to gaze out on the city they ruled. My grimy greave clinked down on this slim balcony. I inhaled deeply. Civ's scent was here. The wooden door easily gave way to my grip with a splintering squeak. I stepped through, alert. "Civ," I whispered, not wanting to alarm her any more than I naturally would, for I was a hulking, shadowy Fenrir breaking into her chamber at night with a man-sized axe slung on my back. Her scent hung heavy in the room, yet the chamber was empty. I paced further into the room. It seemed like she was being kept here, for it was furnished for a jarl's daughter, or wife. And now I realized that indeed this was Jarl Bardewulf's late wife's former private chamber. There was a long, luxurious daybed where noblewomen could recline and gossip with ladies sitting across from them in the room's comfortable cushioned chairs. There was a tall mirror, a luxury anywhere, and this one particularly so, for it was rimmed with gold framing. She had to be somewhere in the castle. I stepped out into the corridor. It was small, its stone flooring ornate mosaic painted blue and white with winter designs. A descending flight of stairs was at its end. I entered the shadow of the spiraling stairwell. There were people stirring below me. Their faint voices, the bitter sense of their bodies plucked at my senses. My feet caressed the stone stairs as I now made an effort to remain silent. 2 men, guards. It was clear from their voices, the faint clink of their armor, the smell of their leather boots and sheaths. As they came within sight, it became apparent they were royal soldiers, those of Goldwater, for they had their shoulder pauldrons in the front of eagle wings, and their uniform colors were white and gold. They stood at the bottom of the stairs, one lazily leaning on his spear, the other on the wall, his arms crossed with a sword dangling at his hip.
"So you think he'll finally fuck her tonight?"
the spearman said. "I wish he would. It'll be all kinds of sin, but at least then it'll be settled, and we can get the hell out of this backwater jarldom. I tell you, what some people do just to sit on some chair and give orders. Sick bastard."
"Come on. If you had a niece like that, you tell me you wouldn't fuck her? You know you...
My fist slammed into his face like I was a man angrily knocking on a door, crumbling the metal of his helm and cracking his skull against the stone wall. Blood oozed down from the bottom of his helm as he slowly slid down onto his ass, his ghost in some other plane by now, and still feeling the lingering pain. The rattle of the other guard desperately trying to unsheathe his sword. My clawed hand whipped around his neck and squeezed, containing my strength enough that he only gasped for air, rather than had his neck snapped. "Take me to her, now." The guard's brown eyes bulged, half with fear, half with the pressure of my hand around his neck. But somehow he managed to nod, his mouth pulled so taut it seemed like his teeth would burst through his lips. My grip eased. "Go." He led me through the twisting corridors of the castle. As we went, the fine mosaic stonework and painted winter scenes gave way to the true form of Stone Mantle, large gray blocks built to withstand freezing winters and the fiercest sieges. We came to a long, narrow corridor where 4 guards stood watch. These were different. They were imperial, for they had the single crimson gauntlet on, representing that they were the extended imperial fist of the Emperor. They were armored in the smooth, expertly crafted charcoal-colored armor of imperial legionnaires, along with their tapering helms and white cloaks. "You there! Why aren't you at your post?" one of the guards said to my captive royal soldier. "And where is your helm?" His voice strained with alertness as he realized something was amiss, for he saw that some hulking brute walked a few paces behind him. He reached for the long saber at his hip. "Intruder!" he called out. Before he could draw his sword, I felt the cold power of my white gauntlet licking at my forearm. A swipe from it summoned spectral white claws that tore his right arm off in a gush of blood and gore. "Ah!" he screamed out as he recoiled back in wild spasms.
"By the Emperor!"
one of the other Imperials shouted behind him. It's a Fenrir!" I had to give it to the bastards. They didn't run. 2 of them readied repeater crossbows. These were of a design that allowed for much faster firing than common crossbows, for they had 5 bolts loaded in them, and could all be fired in quick succession. My chain claw lashed out, its links shooting out through the corridor, the claw on the end latching onto the muzzle of the crossbow. I yanked it out of his grip as easily as out of a child's. However, as it flew toward me, the other marksman managed to fire off several bolts. I saw them blurring toward me, and managed to turn my body just in time that my pauldron and my fully plated arm took them. My cloak billowed as I ran to the group. A bolt whizzed at me, but I was too fast, my movements too sporadic for his racked nerves to aim properly. I was upon him. My claws tore him apart with 2 swipes, tearing his stomach open, spilling red all over the stone walls. I snatched the other marksman that was now without his crossbow, tearing into his arm with the force I seized him with. I hurled him into the wall so hard he coughed out blood, and a tooth went flying from his helm. There remained only 1 Imperial, who had his spear ready, his mind frozen between duty and survival. He managed a spear thrust. Clumsy. Afraid. I twisted with it, letting the spear point slide by me. With my armored elbow, I smashed his helm, hurling him into unconsciousness, and, to slake my fury, I stomped upon his neck when he was on the ground, shattering it. I glanced back down the corridor and saw my captive royal guard was fleeing in the opposite direction, his leather boots pumping as if he were in a foot race. "Where are you going?" I growled, and my chain claws snaked out from me, wrapped around his ankle, and sent him tumbling face first onto the stone floor. As my train retracted in a rush, he was dragged all along the floor, crying out with a mixture of fear and pain. He was at my feet, his cloak draped over his back like he was lying in bed. "Get up, you fool." I plucked him up by the cloak. "Take me to Civ. That is the only way you might get out of this alive." "Yes." He nodded, trembling. "Forgive me." "Go." I shoved him. We came to an ornate door where another pair of guards stood watch.
"Gods! He He rises from the dead.
These Imperials seemed familiar. Might have been present at my trial at Cloudspire, but I had no time to guess. They proved to...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?